Fine, start.
Great.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to one of the community engagement of the ASABE, and today we will be having one of our co-leaders of the Alliance for Modernizing African Agri-food Systems, Dr. Kumar Mallikarjunan, who is a professor of food process engineering at the University of Minnesota. Just to let you know, the Alliance has been an ongoing initiative out of the ASABE on modernizing African agri-food systems. It's been going for over 4 years. We just had our first meeting out of the continent of North America, but it was virtual last November. And what we are going to be doing with a series of community engagement is to walk through our pillars. So we're working through the first pillar, pillar 1, which is on technology, methodology, and innovation. Dr. Kumar, I'll shorten his name, leads this effort. He's led it since its inception, and the co-lead is someone by the name of Dr. Leontine Kofi, out of Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. So without further ado, Kumar, please go ahead to make your presentation, and after that we'll have some time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Klein, for the introduction. And good morning and good afternoon and good evening. I don't know where you're all coming from. So this is going to be the series of talks introducing the Modernizing African Agriculture Initiative that's led by ASABE, and also quite a bit of partnering organizations be involved in this initiative. And as Klein mentioned, we have been working on this almost like 4 years now, and it's kind of like maturing and moving forward. So that's why we would like to give an update on each of the pillars. We have 4 pillars, and like last month, Ajit Srivastava, who's one of the lead for the whole initiative, along with Klein and Margaret Giteau, in that they presented all the updates, overview of the AMAA and the pillars and everything. So I'm going to go start with pillar 1 updates, and I'm going to use few slides from the last time, so that just like to brush up your memory. One of that is the challenges and opportunities in terms of modernizing African agriculture. Is almost like 80% of the farms in Africa, almost like 51 million farms, are smallholder farms, which has about like less than 2 hectares, mostly like 1 to 5 acres, kind of very small farms. And on the other hand, 30% of the production do happen from these small farms that covers the total agricultural output. So it's like very significant production regimen. And also by 2050, we are expecting population to reach almost like 2.4 billion in Africa alone. And it's growing population. That means a lot of mouths to be fed. And then the other alarming or interesting fact is the imports into Africa is almost like $110 billion, which almost like very much equal to the agricultural production in the US, which is about $150 billion. And then just looking at the big cities in Africa, about like top 18 cities, by 2030, the spending expenditure from those places is going to reach almost $1.3 trillion, which means it's really a growing market. And with that, when you look at it, the return on investment per year is projected to be almost $80 billion by transformation of 18 agricultural value chains over 10 years, just like changing the value chain to make it more productive, more effective, more efficient over 10 years. The return on investment is going to be almost $80 billion, which is being attractive for a lot of venture capitalists and investors into the continent. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, but then how are we going to address that? So the Modernizing African Agriculture Initiative, we have a vision, mission. The vision is to modern, productive, and profitable agri-food system in sub-Saharan Africa that ensures food security, provides economic growth, and improves quality of life in a sustainable, equitable, and responsible manner. So it's pretty mouthful, but and also a grand vision. But the mission is to promote modernization of African agri-food value chain from production to consumption through development and deployment of technologies and methodologies. We're not only focusing on only technologies, but also methodologies as well. So we have already talked about this is an ASAB's global initiative. And then the guiding principle that we all have to remember as we move forward is agricultural development is intrinsically linked to economic development. So if you are trying to bring in, improvement in living standards in Africa, it has to come through development in agriculture. So that's very critical and important. And agricultural producers, especially the smallholder farmers, are central in the process of modernizing agriculture. So we cannot ignore them. And focus should be on increasing productivity and profitability. The reason being, we are making sure that agriculture is profitable so that people can be encouraged to involve in agricultural sector. Rather, they are moving away from villages and farms to cities for a better life. Rather, we say that, hey, agriculture is profitable. You don't need to go anywhere and stay back with your farm, with your village, and you should be able to make your ends meet. And then the innovations should be relevant, transformative, sustainable, and cost effective. So it should be affordable, it should be sustainable, and it should transform the whole layout of the land and relevant to African agriculture. So it's not just like you find a technology that's very popular and effective in the West, then we cannot just simply put it there in Africa. So it has to be relevant to African situation. And then innovation should foster environmental protection, economic growth, and human capital empowerment. And in that human capital empowerment, we also add gender equity, youth involvement, and all that. That's very, very critical. So it's just like hidden. I didn't write it there, but it's just like buried into that principle. So pillar one is being led by me, Kumar, and Leontine Kofi from, as Klein mentioned, she's the Deputy Director for Sustainable Development from Ivory Coast Water Distribution Company. And we are kind of leading the effort here to identify potential partners and collaborate to identify technology and methodology needs and develop strategies to meet those needs. And then also coordinate and manage responses to requests for applications from funding agencies, and in special circumstances, sometimes even undertake those projects such as developing standards for more uniform development and uptake of technology. So these are all the primary focus for pillar one, which is going to be promoting technology development, assessment, and deployment of appropriate for our African agri-food system. So accomplishments to date, we went through several cycles of strategic planning process. The pillar one team has about 25 active members, and we are really looking for to add more to the team. If you are interested, please get in touch with me or the leadership team, either Ajit, Klein, or Margaret, and they will also get that back to us to work with it. So we worked on a strategic planning process, which means we got to talk about short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals, which I will go over in detail. And then we had a workshop on smart agriculture at the AMAA first ever conference in the continent. Even though it was virtual, we had every intention of doing it in person, but then there are some other logistical issues that happened, which kind of forced us to do a virtual meeting. But even with that, we were very happy for the level of participation at the conference. And it was pretty overwhelming to me then to see the participation from our colleagues in the continent and their involvement and not only professors and faculty, there are students involved, There are entrepreneurs involved. There are even farmers be there at the conference. So it was very much an engaging conference and showcase. So we had sessions and panel discussions at the AMAA conference. So I'll give overview of all of those things. And then what happened at the end of the panel discussions, what we decided to in terms of moving forward with this initiative. So having said that, the short-term goals is to be identify partners with the existing programs, institutions that are already there in the space doing a lot of developmental work. They are looking into technology and methodology development, implementation of those technologies, and trying to even um, create opportunities for funding those initiatives, and also trying to bring in entrepreneurs and investments from foreign governments and everything. So there's a lot of things that are happening already in the continent. So we're going to go identify those programs, those organizations, and then bring them onto our fold as a big working umbrella to identify specific individuals and also identify partners for funding to support short-term activities. And again, these activities will be within the continent. And then we are going to do a SWOT analysis. SWOT basically the challenges, opportunities, and strengths and weaknesses, and all of that we're going to look into: social, agroecology, economic, and natural resources, including land, water, and opportunities for both electrical and other forms of energy, and technical capabilities in the region. So we would like to get this done in about 6 months' time. So, there will be benefit to bringing together innovators in the regions before starting the SWOT of the region. So we're going to do regionally, not just all of Africa. So maybe we have 4 or 5 regions in Africa: East Africa, West, and then Middle, and then Southern Africa, and like that. So we're going to do these SWOT analysis within the region. This will help us to develop a framework, and then we are going to work with Pan-African Society of Agricultural Engineering, PASAI, and they are going to help us actually implement these activities to run the SWOT analysis in the region. And then this will result in a roadmap and action plans, what we need to do. And then we also have to conduct inventory of existing technologies that are already out there, being successfully adapted by the farmers and by the whole value chain, not just the farmers, the aggregators, the producers, the processors, and all the way to the retail market kind of it. So what kind of technologies are that being used at this point, and how effective they are? And then what are all the gaps in terms of the technologies that what we can improve upon? Instead of just starting from the scratch, we can just improve what's currently available being used and then make it better. So we are going to get an inventory of existing technologies and methodologies by the end of short term. A short-term goal is almost 1 to 3 years. Then when we mentioned that partners we're going to look for, and what are the ways that we're going to look for those kinds of partners, could be they are collaborative, resourceful, and then mostly somebody who are familiar with what happened in developing countries. So we're going to look at farmer students from US and Canada institutions who are working in the continent right now, so we can bridge the gap very easily. And African institutions with track record of working with US researchers, especially there are a lot of USAID funded projects, the innovation labs. There are about 20 some innovation labs in the US. They're really actively participating in variety of projects in the continent. So we're going to identify those institutions who have actively engaged in developmental work with US institutions. And then we would like to also see that it's not just all academics. It has to be academic, it has to be industry, government agencies like extension agents, and then non-governmental organizations in the continent to be part of these effort. And then we also look at the technology should be deployable. Basically, we would like to see how we can create an active public-private sector engagement. So, even you have a technology, but that needs to go into actual implementation by the farming and the whole value chain, actors in the value chain. And then we also have to include some of the grassroots organizations, and we are still being challenged on how to identify those at this point. And then we are also trying to see not only engineers be part of this technology, methodology, innovation, we also need to include social scientists, economists on an advisory role into addressing this in a broader sense, like a whole systems approach that cover local cultural aspects of implementing a new technology. So there's ethics involved. There is challenges in terms of economical and then even sometimes cultural values that we need to be very sensitive of before jumping our gun saying that why don't you use this technology or why don't you use this methodology kind of. So we got to be mindful of uh, working with communities, and sometimes we just put Africa as one big brush. It's not just like one. There are about like almost 50 so countries in Africa have their own culture, their own history, their own ethnic diversity there. So one solution in one country may not be applicable to another region or another country. So we need to be mindful of all those variations and the diverse population and all that when we are trying to develop our solutions to improve African agriculture. So the medium-term goals are now once we have the SWOT analysis done, we are going to implement those programs and activities that have been identified. And then we also have to go with some of the existing technologies, programs to broader geographic reach. So, we did the inventory, and let's say there is a particular technology that's very popular in Ghana, and that has the potential for implementation in, say, in Kenya. We should be able to do such cross-border implementation of such technology. So we talk about currently existing technologies and programs, how we can reproduce, how we can replicate some of those successes in other regions of Africa. And then also we can do scaling up strategies with partners. So most of the development do happen at the lab, do happen at maybe an university level. And how do we scale this up? How do we make this methodologies and technologies can be implementable in a broader sense? So again, we need to work with some of those actors, like ADCO has a training facility in Malawi. So something similar. So we actually talked about innovation hubs. I didn't really mention that in the beginning slides, but if you have attended the last presentation by Ajit and Margaret, they talked about the innovation hubs that we are planning to develop in the region. And those innovation hubs would play a role in terms of linking the partners to innovators, to entrepreneurs, to all the funding models, and then scaling these technologies up for adoption. And then last but not the least is to set up a system or an infrastructure to encourage innovators. So we say example would be innovation boot camps can happen. We did a showcase at the conference this time. So similar showcases, but this time it was a virtual showcase, but we would like to see, can we do in person on the continent showcase of technologies where really people can come and feel, touch, and engage with these technological innovations and see how best that they would really think about implementing in their act. So again, we are also looking into developing requests for proposals for funding and to development activities, like this is going to be improving the existing technologies to somewhat brand new innovative technologies that are needed to address so many issues that we talk about. So this is our medium-term goals. And then when we go to long-term goals, is going to be that moving along, demonstrate these developments to farmers, processors, like basically show and tell, and then see how best they can adopt and commercialize these methodologies and technologies. You need to make it affordable. We talked about it. We make it broadly available. So those things happen only when you can commercialize this. So we will work with Pillar 2, which is basically entrepreneurship, business development, and we will work with capacity building, which is Pillar 3. And also we need to have infrastructure such technologies to flourish. And then policymakers needs to be involved in enabling this technological development. That's going to be pillar 4. So it's really, we will be working across with other pillars in moving forward. So that's the long-term goal. So outcomes is basically trained technology advisors and profitability employment opportunities in agriculture. And we are thinking of market access to not only the products, the farm products, but also market access to the technology, methodology, innovations. Without that, these cannot sustain and survive and achieve success. And then the value added processes are going to be developed over the time. So these are all the potential outcomes. So with that frame of reference, we went to the conference in Senegal in November. So we had a pre-conference workshop, and which is on smart agriculture. We had a overwhelming support and participation from a lot of folks from African continent. A lot of them are young students, which is very encouraging. To some entrepreneurs also be part of the workshop. It was a whole day workshop that we did, almost like 6 hours workshop. And we talked about precision farming. We talked about artificial intelligence, data-driven decisions, talked about Internet of Things and how sensing applications are available there for resource management. We talked about robotics and automation in trying to how we can minimize crop damage, and real world hands-on case studies. And then also we provided networking opportunities for the folks to mingle, and we did quite a bit of hands-on activities at that time. So it was very, very positive, and I felt we did a great job. And also we were surprised to see the caliber and motivation and the commitment from our counterparts in Africa in terms of embracing the smart agriculture. So they are not really far behind in going for these technological advances. And then we also had several presentations. We had like 2 sessions on pillar 1, and I just like lumped all of the presentations into one slide. When you look at it, some of those titles are so innovative and creative to like really forthcoming in future technological aspects. So I'll just leave it for a couple of minutes so you can read the titles. Like, one is on cassava, the other one is on potato harvesting, and we also had a grain drying, and then also chicken incubator. So quite a bit of that was there. So we also had quite a number of posters at the conference, and this is just like posters related to pillar 1. So I just like pulled them out. And when you look at it again, microbial fuel cells, that's pretty advanced, to irrigation technologies for dry season production, and then processing, coffee processing, and then looking into breadfruit. So quite a number of products, quite a number of countries. You can see Nigeria, Ghana, and even like researchers from US were also presenting it there, California Davis and Ohio State University to say. So we had a wonderful conference that I would like to say. And then we also had focused innovation talks at the conference from pillar 1. One is on milk processing. Another one is on electric tractors for small farms. And we talked about mechanized farming in Africa, and then how we can advance the smart agriculture. These were all very well received, and which followed a very engaging panel discussion and after the innovation talks. So again, these are all like I believe as available as a recorded presentations from the conference site. And I'm not sure whether everybody have access to it. I'll talk to ASABE and see if that is available. Probably you should be able to go listen to them and get some information from there. So with regard to panel discussion, we had specific research priorities were identified. Again, this was very overwhelming for me because of the level of participation. We had about like 80 people participating in the panel discussion. It was very nice, and a lot of topics that came about and looked at specific topics like linking agriculture to health, which was a novel concept to me in a way, even though it's not so novel. But we are talking about One Health nowadays, and One Health being mostly focused on zoonotic diseases, antimicrobial resistance, and along that line. But now they are talking about how we can put agriculture into it, which means soil health, environmental health, water usage, and how that all affect the climate resilience, and put that all into connecting the dots all the way from crop production to healthy living in the life. So that was a nice concept that they talked about, creating a priority for that. And then they said like uh, we should also these initiatives should focus on domestic needs, not just the crops that have export potential. Yeah, we need to work on crops that have export market potential, which is going to bring more revenue, more profitability to the farm. But let's not just only focus on them. We should also focus on domestic needs and also traditional conventional crops. They even talked about like neglected orphan crops that show promise. So which means not go for the mainstream crops like corn and where you can focus on the export market and bring money to the farm. Rather, you just also focus on other crops like sorghum and minor millets. So they talked about that. And then can we somehow look into resilience for smallholder farms? And that's also another research priority that they mentioned. So these are all like, give us a frame of reference in terms of moving forward, in terms of, hey, where we can produce a meaningful research for opportunities, and then so that we can produce requests for proposals for funding as we move along. Like, when we go reach the potential funding agencies, we can tell them, hey, these are all the topics, these are all the priorities are of importance to African agriculture in terms of modernizing it. And then we also talked about things to consider. They said, like, look into not just like listen to ag engineers in the academic institutions. You got to go get input from farmers, and then also identify what they have been doing with their traditional knowledge. What are all the current solutions that are very effective? We don't need to fix something that's not broken, kind of thing. So look at the traditional knowledge. And then they talked about it has to be multidisciplinary, which means we already mentioned that just don't look at that as the engineering problem. It's has aspects of economic issues, social aspects, cultural aspects. So that will take the technology to the next level. Then they also talked about the innovations should be smart, and so that it attracts youth involvement, and instead of like displacing youth to cities and mega centers in the continent, they could stay back at the farm and see the profit potential. So the agricultural innovation should be smart and attractive for youth. And then the other one is research engineers and stakeholders should consider solution that integrates locally available material instead of getting something importing into the country. Rather use the resources that are already available in country, and then that will boost local economy and also provide affordable solutions that can be easily implemented in the country. And then also they are asking for global support for local production and explore human potential within Africa instead of like bringing in uh, technologies from outside. They are talking about like, no, we just want support in terms of financial funding. So, but we will find the solutions locally by developing human potential in the continent. And that's one of the things to consider, that basically like mentioned many times by many different individuals in different ways. This is just like a summary of their thought process, saying that like, hey, you just give us support in terms of funding the activity, and let's find the solutions ourselves. So you don't dictate that, but rather support. So that's another way of thinking, newer thinking compared to the previous times. So the other issues identified is how we can move the technology and methodology needle forward in terms of implementation. So what they are saying is it's not just like technology development. You need to also go along with business models to promote the development. So again, it's kind of like the entrepreneurship, the business development, which is pillar 2. So we got to work together on this aspect. You develop innovative technologies, you develop innovative methodologies, you can move forward with that, but that's not sufficient if you don't have an attractive business model. And then they also talked about technology push versus market pull, which is one of the major setback even in the Western developed countries. Sometimes when a technology development organization will develop the technology, and then they'll say, oh, it's great, and then they will try to push it to the market. And then the market would not accept that. Sometimes they will succeed, and almost 90% of the time they fail because the market is not having a confidence in these technologies being pushed. Rather, if you have a market pull, there is a demand for a particular issue to be addressed by the market. And if the technology developers, methodology developers develops solutions for that market pull, that will succeed very quickly. So we need to understand the balance between technology push and market pull. And then they also talked about legal issues and ethical issues in smart agriculture, which is very critical and important, and especially when you bring in the cultural and societal aspects in Africa. So how these smart agricultures will be perceived and how they will be welcomed. Even in the West, it's a challenge, but especially over there, it's going to be a lot more questions are there to be answered even before embracing these technology and methodology innovations. And then access to finance and insurance. This is another thing that they talked about, insurance, ensuring a lot of farm activities and the farm production. And that's been a challenge. So again, this is kind of like pillar 4, where we talk about infrastructure and policy development in terms of we will work with them and trying to address the issues related to how we can move forward, provide market access for financial support for the farming operations, development of technologies, development of methodologies, and commercializing them to the marketplace. So there's quite a bit of work to be done. We are moving in the right direction, but we cannot just like sit back and relax. Right now, we are accelerating the efforts in terms of modernizing the African agriculture. So some of the new frontiers they mentioned about ocean farming, which is interesting. I've never heard of it myself, honestly. And they basically say, hey, can we go deep down into the sea? I think it should be a C, not C. Spelling mistake. Sorry, I should fix that. Ocean farming. Then they also talked about vertical farming, which is a popular thing coming in the US. I've seen, because when the land is of very expensive commodity to have, we don't have enough land resources to produce. Vertical farming comes as a better solution. And then they also talked about aquaponics. And then the last but not the least, which is very unique and relevant to African context, is desert to foraging. So how we can, the sub-Saharan desert, much of that can be reclaimed for creating forage crops, and that can feed cattle, and that can promote meat production and the like. So there's huge opportunity out there in terms of creating a foraging operation at the fringes of the Sahara Desert. So we quite a bit of talk and all that, and then my work and Leontine's work is cut out as we move forward. As I mentioned, like the short-term goal, the medium-term goal, and long-term goal. So by the time when we meet next time, some of the short-term goals would be addressed, and we'll be able to give a report on those activities when we meet next year. So again, thanks for you listening. And I'll stop here, and I will open up the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kumar, for that talk. And I forgot to mention who I was. Klein Nilogy here, a professor at Purdue, and I also co-lead the Alliance for Modernizing African Agri-food Systems with Ajit and Margaret. So we open up for questions. Please, you can either write your question in the chat or just unmute and ask your question directly to Kumar. We'll appreciate if you could just say your name, where you're from, and before asking your question. Thanks.
So I think there is one question on the chat by Nathaniel. Have there been other movements in other industries that have done a good job of being mindful of local culture and industry when trying to assist underdeveloped nations adopt new technologies that you all are using as a reference? Or is this inclusive and mindful approach still pretty new? So, based on my take, and we have some really be involved in the continent, like, I know like Maynard is here and clients involved in Africa quite a bit. And with that, I would say it's fresh and new concept to be inclusive. In my opinion, I've been involved in African development more than 20 years with my USAID projects. And in the past, what we have done mostly is prescriptive. Like, we will go there and look at the problem and we will prescribe a solution more so from our perspective than asking them, like, how do you solve this problem from your end? We will just assist you, help you with our knowledge, and we can work together. That has never happened. So we will be more prescriptive, say like, hey, we have done research in the US on these aspects. Let's try to see how that fit to your mold. So most of the time it was almost like putting a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. We have done that. So now I think the AMAA initiative is fresh and new to some extent. But as you said, like other industries, yes, some of them have tried that to be inclusive, mindful of the local culture, but I'm not sure how successful they have done to say as a user case study to understand. Because look at the tractors. They are so big and the farm sizes are small, and try to bring in the tractor to them may not be the right option. So then they go for a two-wheel tractor that you walk behind. So is that the solution, or should we go for new way of doing it? I don't know how many of you heard Hello Tractor, which is almost like Uber or or a Lyft, kind of like car rental, but you can rent the farm services. So the farmer don't need to own a big tractor. The tractor is owned by somebody else, and then there's an app, Hello app, and then you can schedule your farm operation with those folks. So it's coming so much, so which is something uniquely developed from an African perspective. We did not tell them you could do it. We don't have something like that here. So what I'm saying is there are some innovative solutions that are coming out of the continent, and then we need to embrace that. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, there are things out there you can copy and try to adopt, or something that's created out of the continental effort. So I can tell you, like, M-Pesa, when it came in Kenya, there was like almost like 20 years back, I would say, the technology for transferring money through mobile phones, not the smartphone. Like, it's just like mobile phone with just only buttons and nothing but SMS messaging in the one-line screen. And even with that, they transferred money among mostly immigrant laborers who are moving from, say, Somalia to Kenya, and then they don't want to carry money, which is pretty risky, that they could steal the money from somebody. So they felt like, hey, how do I transfer money to my family in other part? And M-Pesa came out. Even like US, we are getting that very, very late now, like all these Google Pay and Apple Pay, but you need to have a smartphone. Those days, it was like the Nokia phone, which is a very simple phone, and they would do with that. So that was developed by their own need. So that's what I'm saying. A market pull is more successful in driving and creating innovative solutions than the technology push. Even though what we had as a technology, it doesn't move forward. So I don't know that I answered your question, but
Yes, thank you so much.
yeah.
If you will allow me quickly just to add something to what Kumar said, in the aspect of when you're looking at deploying technologies and being sensitive to the culture you're deploying it to, one thing from my experience I see that is different from what we're trying to pursue with the AMAA is using a business model approach.
Mhm.
So a lot of projects that eventually get dead or killed in while they're implemented, or is because you have a technology deployed. For example, it works great, but no one thought about how will that be maintained? Where will the spares come from? Where will be the service come from? So it's like you selling something, a device, and not providing tech support or any of that. And that what kills most of those technologies. It's not that they wouldn't work. And so a lot of our approaches with a business model approach, where it's not just deploying that technology, but creating the ecosystem that will support the technology to grow there. So we're in the meeting we had in November, we had a tech showcase, which we try to feature local companies trying to do good, both hard and soft tech that are either developed, out of the continent, but obviously that ecosystem will be grown and developed within the continent that will be able to support their devices and technologies. So I think that's key. Sometimes that causes things to fail. You don't have that support system in place, or that ecosystem that we naturally will have here, because technologies are developed here and deployed and made to work.
Okay. Thank you, Klein.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mhm.
You're welcome.
So there's a question from Ed Lambert. Is there an estimate on how much of Sahara is able to go to foraging? I don't have the one answer to it. I can give a guess estimate, 10 to 15%. Klein, if you have better value, I've read so many information related to that, even journal articles, but they haven't really put in, the percentage that can be converted to foraging.
So I don't understand the question. It says, is there an estimate as to how much of the Sahara?
It's supposed to be Sahara. Spelling.
Okay, Sahara is able, okay.
So the desert part I mentioned, like, foraging, convert that to foraging, and then you get the foraging that will create, cattle farming, and then you can go for providing more meat to the population. So that's what they talked about. How much of the African Saharan desert can be converted to foraging?
Yeah. Just to let you know, 60%, Africa has the largest undeveloped fertile land. 60% of the land is still available, is untapped in terms for cultivation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
while we wait for any other question, I just want to give us another context. I think Kumar mentioned this before his talk, going into his talk, or at the beginning. The continent of Africa is the next frontier. There's a very nice article that came out, published by the New York Times in October of last year. It talks about the youngest youth population. I think Kumar mentioned that by 2050, 1 in 4 persons in the globe will be African. When you look at the population of the continent in terms of young population, it has the youngest. When you look at digital technology like cell phones, every other African has a cell phone currently. So there are a lot of great things. The demographics already is showing that that's one of the large, potentially next frontier of growth. And I think we as a society are well placed to begin to think of how we make an impact, especially knowing that food will be a big, huge factor in trying to feed the growing population. Just to throw that out. I know Kumar did mention some of that, but just to mention that again.
Yeah, thank you. There's another comment, I think Doug has it. He says, I'm involved with a group at my church that is helping with small farms in Zambia. And an issue we are seeing is inadequate, untimely soil sampling analysis to identify crop nutrition needs. Please keep this in mind as a potential concern. So again, we do talk about simple technologies like, you're talking about like soil analysis, and maybe like, you should be able to talk to folks in University of Zambia. They may be able to help you with analyzing your soil samples. I know like they have facilities. I have visited their facilities myself. So I know that they could do it for you, but I'm not sure how expensive, how cost effective, or how timely, that I cannot answer, but they do have resources available. And Keith may have a comment. Our friend Kikle, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I didn't know how to raise my hand in the computer, so I physically raised my hand here. Thank you, Kumar, for the insightful presentation. Let me add a couple things. One is on the challenge. You mentioned ethical and legal issues. Yes. I think I would also add security issues, security of the data, because it could be hacked, who is responsible and so on and so forth. So I would add security in there. And in the new frontier, I would add also self-replicating crops. There are crops that self-replicate so that you could have multiple harvests. So I would add self-replicating crops.
Okay. Can you give some examples of self-replicating crops?
For example, alfalfa is a self-replicating. It's a multiple type, multi-harvesting crop is, for example, alfalfa, which I know.
Okay.
And I think there are some crops which replicate themselves.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
I want to make a quick comment, Kumar, if you will, and thanks again, Kifla, for that comment on this question about the need for soil sampling analysis in Zambia, and I'll say in the continent. And I say this for those who are entrepreneurial. Where you see there's a need, think of it as a business opportunity out there. So we are all techies here, or at least most of us. So as you see, you identify a need. Some of us are young grad students. You don't always have to be a young grad student to think of entrepreneurship, but think of the entrepreneurial opportunity that is available to you to begin to look at that market.
Okay. And Scott has a comment. He says, like, I remember there was a push to grow jojoba oil production in the desert. Any take on that? Anybody from the continent to say something about it? Jojoba oil producing trees in sub-Saharan desert. Klein, do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah.
It's a bush, Klein, and it grows like an oil seed. And I tried to look it up. They were talking about it like as a biodiesel replacement. It looks like mainly it's for cosmetics and things of that nature.
Yeah, they did that in India. I know that India had quite a bit of jojoba oil, especially in the south where I come from. Yeah, there was a push to produce more of that, but I haven't heard that in an African context myself. Yeah.
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 Thanks for sharing that, Scott.
And then Ajit has a comment. Ajit Mahapatra, US-Ghana collaboration developing FPSU's capacity in agri-research, education, and extension to enhance faculty and students in experiential learning. So it's just like mentioning that it's kind of like these kinds of projects and activities are happening. As I said, like, we are going to identify such partnerships, such engaged activities, and then try to work together. So thanks, Ajit, for sharing that. Yeah. Okay.
In the new frontier, Kumar, is there any thought about moving to another planet also?
Not like Star Trek. No, not it. Maybe. Yeah. So there's a comment from James. Indigenous crops like vegetable and perennial crops have been the major source of food that can be utilized and survive in the desert, which at times becoming extinct. Are there some technologies put in place to ensure their continual existence and their species? One can put emphasis on that as well. Yeah, definitely. Looking into some of the underutilized. We did mention that I didn't put the exact names of them. I said like only a few crops, but yes, definitely indigenous crops that are having potential to grow in a extreme weather conditions. Desert is one. Then we need to somehow find technologies to preserve that. So we did mention that here.
I have a question for you, Kumar. Given you've just talked about the initiative of Pillar One, and we do have quite a bit of membership here. I'm sure they're here interested in this topic with respect to what the Alliance is doing. How will you suggest, if they were interested in working in Pillar One, or how will you suggest they do that?
So they should communicate with me or either the leadership, like, Ajit, Klein, or Margaret, so they can also be contacted. But if they want to contact directly, I'll put my email address on the chat. You can email me, and then I will put you in the list of the thing. And whenever we have a meeting for Pillar One, I will send the information to you so that you could join some of the Zoom calls, because people are all over the world to be part of the initiative. So we would mostly do Zoom calls on a monthly basis. So you could join the Zoom call and then work with the activities in Pillar One. Like basically we talked about SWOT analysis, talked about identifying partners and whatnot. So we have several activities that are being planned, but then as we move with those activities, you could be part of those activities by sharing your email, and then we will contact you when such things happen.
Thanks, Kumar. In addition to what Kumar said, this also includes mature U.S. companies.
Yes.
As we know, some of the technologies developed by companies that are quite mature technologies here can be deployed over, in the continent of Africa and repurposed there to work. And this goes from the area of machine systems all the way to irrigation. So don't think that you're in a US company and you have a technology that might not be used elsewhere. We are also looking for participation from companies as well, and European, if you're any Asian, wherever you're located in the world, as long as your technologies can work.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you.
So Ajit, as I wait for any other question, just one last roundup. Where will you see the next your pillar going? What are some of the near-term things? I know you've presented your short, medium, and long-term, but what if someone joins? What would be some of the near-term things you'll be looking to work on?
Yeah,
this year?
we are working on a survey tool to get information on the active participation, potential institutions and partners in Africa. And also we are developing a survey tool to identify existing technology, methodology solutions. I know Ajit has mentioned that they have done something similar to that from the USAID funded project. So we will just, get those data and then update that information through a survey tool. And then we would love to also get a SWOT analysis done. So we would like to have a mediated SWOT analysis within the region. So we're going to identify the regions, and people will be traveling to that one location. And then some of them who cannot travel, they can come over Zoom to be part of the SWOT analysis. And it'll be that will happen in the near period. So the partners can join in those efforts. So first, we are going to develop questionnaire, like surveys, to collect information in terms of what's being currently done in the technology, methodology, innovation space from a variety of projects, activities that are already going on.
Thanks very much, Kumar, for highlighting some of the very near-term things you'll be doing right off the bat this year. As we close off this membership hour, just want to remind you quickly on the chat box, there's a link to a YouTube channel that Dolores posted. Thanks, Dolores.
Yes, thank you.
And that link is a playlist of all the AMAA conference talks that were given in November. So please, you can just go to the playlist and listen to them at your time or leisure. The other thing,
recopying that, if somebody who joined lately, I recopy the message from Dolores about the recordings of the AMA conference.
Okay, great, thanks. The other thing is, note that the AMAA is a volunteer membership initiative, so anyone can join. Please do contact, if you're interested in Pillar One, do contact Kumar Hero and or myself, Ajit Srivastava, professor of Michigan State University, Margaret guitar professor at Purdue. And in the next subsequent weeks, subsequent months, next month in February, we'll have Dr. Terry Howell out of Department Head of Ag and Biological Engineer, University of Arkansas, and I will be leading to talk about the business and entrepreneurship Pillar 2. In the subsequent months after that, we'll have Dr. Dirk Meyer and Joseph Akur talk about the capacity building aspect of the initiative. That's Pillar 3. And lastly, we'll have the policy, infrastructure and policy framework to be given by Dr. Michael Ngardi out of McGill University and Dr. Linus Okpara out of Stellenbosch University. So that's how the membership hour will be going, and in the subsequent 3 months from now, so February, March, and April. Thanks a lot for being part of today's membership hour, and we look forward to having you in the next one next month. That will be announced by Sarah. I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for the wonderful presentation. Yes, our next member hour will be, as Klein mentioned, himself and Terry Howell presenting Pillar 2 of AMAA, and that will be February 7th. That's a Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.